Morning, everybody. Welcome back. We're getting ready to kick off the finals here at the NRG in Mundelein, Illinois. Really exciting stuff. We've got, both players now are queued for the RC in Dallas. I want to bring my friends Devin and Mason in back with me here just to talk a little bit about what's getting ready to go on. So, guys, welcome in.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Hello. Good to see you guys. So, the winner is going to be into the championship, the NRG Series Championship, which is kind of what is amazing about this new structure, right? So no pressure at all, huh?
None whatsoever. Absolutely not. No, this is really awesome finals. I believe the player who's going to win also gets a token as well, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of pressure here.
Yeah, for someone like Sarah, this is her first big top 8 of a big event. She wanted to grind her circuit all year. She wants to make it the Players Championship. Pack one, pick one event. She's here. She has the opportunity. I'm sure there's no pressure there. And from Dykman, someone who grinds a lot of our events as well. You see him at like 95% of our opens. Curious to see if, with this sort of great start here early, are we going to see him at 100% and make that push for the championship if he doesn't make it today?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I'm really glad that we've changed this tournament structure around a little bit to have these high stress matches and things like that. So with that, we're going to have Rhinos versus Murktide. Are you guys leaning either way at this point?
I think given Sarah's sideboard configuration with the 3 copies of explosive, I think I'd have to give it to Sarah.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough matchup. Both players are really good. It's really close. Sarah does have those 3 engineered explosives. That's going to do a lot of work, but it's hard to bet against Dykman. But I'm also sort of a Rhinos hater, so I've got to pick Sarah. I've got to pick Murktide. I'm going with Murktide all the way.
And I'm the Rhinos guy, and I'm still not even taking Rhinos. So
that's funny. Well, Sarah's warmed up. She just played against Rhinos, right? So maybe feeling pretty good after winning their semifinals against Rhinos. So with that, we're going to go ahead and shoot it down to you guys, let you cover the finals. Just a reminder, we do have Pioneer going on simultaneously right now, so we'll get you some action from that as soon as we're done here. But guys, take us away.
Like Matt just said, we're here in the finals. We do have Pioneer going. We're going to switch over to that when we're done here. We have our little trophy in the middle of the screen right now, and it looks like both players have resolved mulligans from what I'm guessing here from their sort of demeanor. And we're ready to go. We have Sarah Shearing on your right playing Izzet Murktide. I believe our number 2 seed after the switch, that's going to put her on the play. Steven Dykman here on the left. Oh, sorry, she's number 6 out of the bottom. I don't know why I thought she was number 2. Anyways, that's going to put Dykman on the play, and that matters a bunch here.
I thought they were just going to leave the trophy in play the entire match. I thought that would have been awesome.
That would have been really awesome until we get to combat. I like it until then. As we do see Ragavan on turn 1 here for Sarah off of Spire Bluff Canal.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, Steven, the 5 seed, Sarah, the 6 seed. So Steven does get to be on the play. Very important in this matchup. We saw the last match that Sarah played. I believe she was in the play in the last match against Rhinos, if I'm not mistaken. So, a pretty big advantage. We see a triumph here. Steven's probably thinking about, firing off a Dead God main phase when a player on spell, Pierce counterspell. But as we talked about before, Ragavan, not the biggest issue. There's not a ton of stuff that you can hit off of the Rhinos deck, but I think the bigger issue is the mana generation that it provides for Sarah.
Yeah, we were going to see Sarah play that ball, but she held it on turn 1 in case she drew something like Electric Shredder or DRC. Had sort of a good setup hand here. Thinking about if she wants to fetch away that top card or not. Has Unholy Heat, has Expressive Iteration, and looks like a land as 3 of the 5 cards in her hand. And she's figuring out, is that top card exactly what she's exciting for? Both players are qualified for Dallas, like we said, too, which is super exciting with this event. You got everything going on, the big stuff, and also the OP with Wizards of the Coast as well.
Right, exactly. Yep, definitely. And definitely good to qualify for Dallas. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Dallas, the format is Pioneer, but then it feeds the Modern Pro Tour. I think they just announced that the other day. So, players playing Modern here, they're, gonna have to play some Pioneer in Dallas, but they get to qualify for Dallas, potentially qualifies for the Modern Pro Tour, which is pretty exciting. And Sarah's going to fetch Shock here, which I imagine means she either just did not like the card, wants to hold up Counterspell, or is going to cast a Shredder here.
Yeah, it does look like a situation where she just didn't like the top card. I think if she had Shredder, she would have played it before the bobble, but probably just, even if she doesn't have Counterspell, wants to represent it for Dykman. Dykman will probably slam into it anyways. He can't really afford to play around it, but she just wants that option to be open to her. And she does have Dress Down in hand. We talked yesterday on stream about how it's sort of like a Counterspell against a lot of decks. This is one of the spots where it's most often not that way.
Yeah, not going to do a lot here. The one thing that I will mention, Steven does have 4 copies of Fury compared to the other Rhino list that had less copies. So it might be something, it might be a spot where Sarah can maybe save the dress down up until the point where Steven casts a Fury. She might get a little bit of value out of it that way. But if my guess is that if Sarah bricks here, doesn't draw a counter spell, Steven plays a Shardless Agent, she's probably going to have to just cycle that dress down and try to find some gas here.
Yeah, Dress Down also would turn Delirium. She has Ragman, Bobble, and land in the graveyard. So then Holy Heat would be live. And, if this is a Violent Outburst off the Cascade, that's a big difference in the amount of pressure here.
Yeah, especially with Sarah at 17. And it looks like Steven either choosing to pass here or does have a copy of Violent Outburst. Violent Outburst specifically nice because you get to end of turn it, force the counter spell if Sarah does have it. And then you still get to untap, potentially resolve a second one. So we'll see. Looks like Steven does have a copy. I think I saw a Fury, a Borrower, and a Violent Outburst.
Mm-hmm. Is there ever a world where Dykman just wants to play something like Borrower and try and bait a counterspell? Or was that just too low impact? Something Sarah just won't bite on?
Because of the Lightning Bolts, I don't love it. Because Lightning Bolt is a card that if you can resolve a copy, like if you have 4/4s, the bolts don't really do that much. So you're kind of giving Sarah a good bolt target. It looks like Steven's actually going to play nothing here. Very interesting.
Yeah, it looks like Steven's really respecting counterspell out of Sarah here and just instead going to value his life total and try and maybe squeeze on a certain turn.
Yeah, I wonder, maybe looking to see if you could find a copy of Force of Negation, because then you could fight over the Outburst that way. Or maybe wants to try and get Sarah to commit more mana. Like, for example, if Sarah were, you know what? So he knows that Sarah has 2 copies of Spell Pierce. So if Steven has land 5 rolled up, he's probably waiting until turn 5. So he's gonna get got by counterspell. That's gonna get him no matter what. But he can at least play around the Spell Pierces, which I think maybe that makes sense. But I don't know. You're giving Sarah 2 more turns. It's kind of close.
Yeah, it's definitely close. I think, like you said, if your hand's just all lands and outbursts, you might as well because it's a card you can beat and otherwise you can't. And we know we do have Brazen Borrower and stuff. And it looks like, Sarah might actually tap out in a spot where before she wins, she'd be like, well, would Dykman really hold it? Would he respect my spell pierces and counterspell that much? And like I think you correctly identified, I think Dykman is. And he's just like, listen, my 4/4s win this game so quickly. I don't need to go for anything right now.
Yeah, he knows he's going to get got by counterspell throughout the entire game, no matter what. But if he could play around Spell Pierce, and I love the shock here. Sarah's hand doesn't really have a ton going on, but the shock represents. I think the shock is more likely to say that, hey, I have Spell Pierce plus counterspell, and it does because Steven's been respecting the Spell Pierce. Now you're kind of putting that fear into him more as well.
Yeah, and Sarah does have Otawara in hand too, so worst comes to worst, she can Holy Key to Rhino and then Otawara another one, and we know that Dykman has some other cards in hand, but there aren't more Rhinos coming. She might be able to stabilize because the fair game plan, that's something Murktide's used to battling against with other decks.
Yeah. Now, if Dykman ever finds maybe like a second Cascade spell, then maybe you trade an Otawara and a Heat for the first one. The second one might be a little bit tougher for you to beat if you don't find a counter spell. The other thing that Steven could do is maybe just jam a Fury this turn if he's worried about Spell Pierce. But if you have land 5, you might as well, like the Outburst also plays around Spell Pierce too. So we'll see what Dykman does here. My guess is probably just land go, wants to hold up the Outburst.
Yeah, I imagine hold up the Outburst makes a lot of sense. It also lets you hold up Brazen Borrower for unsummon whatever threat you play and cast. Obviously not the best, but if it somehow eats a counterspell, you're over the moon.
Yeah, Chance mentioning Blood Moon. There are no copies of Blood Moon in Sarah's main deck, and players do have access to deck lists. So Steven does not have to play around Blood Moon in a game 1 situation. So Steven can, freely fetch the Shocklands there.
Yep. Yeah, Sarah has all that stuff in her sideboard, as it looks like Dykman is going to play the Otawara, and like you mentioned, he's done playing around Spell Pierce. The time is now. We're going to play Fable the Mirror Breaker. We can beat Spell Pierce, and this is going to actually do a great job of sort of, if I have Counterspell, is this a card you want to fight over or not? Because from Sarah's perspective, she's not sure if Dykman's waiting or if it's just an example of he doesn't have the Rhinos and had a bunch of interaction for maybe Ragavans. She has to sort of solve that equation. Yeah,
and I like you kind of get the best of both worlds by playing Fable here. You can pay for Pierce, and if there's a counterspell, you have ideally the Violent Outburst is kind of the threat that you'd rather resolve anyway. So if this trades for a counterspell, I think you're pretty happy with that from Dykman's side of things.
Yep. And I love this use of Dress Down here in main phase 2 for Sarah. She knows that card's a little clunky in her hand and she needs to find an actual counter spell. And Fury is something that maybe she'd want to answer later, but right now didn't have anything to even worry about Fury. So can't really counter the 3/3 double strike part of it.
Yeah, and the timing there on Dress Down, very important. You want to do it second main phase because otherwise it's going to be in play on your turn and you won't get the turn on something like Channeler plus Iteration, which Sarah does have access to if she wants to go that route.
Yeah, and Sarah might want to do that too because she just doesn't actually have anything. You know, she's postured really well. She made a lot of plays that were like, hey, I have counterspell, but here's this expressive iteration, and she's looking for actual counterspell here.
Not playing the Channeler first, but there's the counterspell. I was going to say, because she doesn't have a land rolled up, so she doesn't want to take the risk of not finding land plus counterspell, which I think I like.
Yeah, she's found counterspell, and then unfortunately for her, both Ledger Shredder and Murktide Regent, that means she's not going to be able to play one of those cards and hold up counterspell. So now Sarah has to decide, all right, you know, before we talk about it, Dykman keep a hand with just a bunch of removal and Fable the Mirror Breaker, and, you know, that's what's happening here. Was he respecting Spell Piercing? Can I afford to, you know, play a card like Murktide Regent this turn? Will that be able to go the distance? I believe it was Dykman, the person who had 2 main deck subtleties. No, that was not. That was our other. It was CJ.
No, that was somebody. Yeah, that was CJ.
Yeah.
So Dykman, no subtleties, just 4 Borrower, 4 Dead Gone.
That's right. So Sarah here tanking.
I wonder if you just jam the Murktide here. I think she's going to.
Yeah, I think given how weak her hand is when it comes to pressure, she just doesn't have enough pressure to actually do anything else. And that looks to be Otawara from hand that we saw earlier, if I am not mistaken. A little weird not to use Otawara if that's the case, for, you know, your delving, your casting purposes, but might be a situation where Sarah's trying to get Dykman to not think about cards like Unholy Heat and just, you know, be like, hey, I still don't have the spell pierce. Don't worry about it. You know, we'll get to it later. Oh, it's a Misty Rainforest. Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, so Otawara's still in hand.
Okay.
Now,
we went for the full 5.
Full 5. I think, well, like you said, she kind of has to jam, given her position and the fact that her hand is kind of like, I would say her hand is a little weak right now. You kind of just have to hope that there's no Brazen Borrower here. And also, here's another thing. Because Steven has, and she knows this, because Steven has respected Spell Pierce this entire game, like, Steven did nothing for the first 3 turns, played a Fable on turn 5. He's not going to jam Petty Theft here. If he has it, he's definitely 100% going to untap first. And because Steven's in this position where he's played around Spell Pierce the whole game, if you untap and then cast the Petty Theft, he also doesn't want to then cast the Violent Outburst because then you're also going to get that Spell Pierce. So this is kind of the decision point for Steven. It's like, well, you've played around it the whole game. Do you no longer respect it?
Yeah, that's true. And we are going to see Dykman. It looks like he is going to cast Petty Theft here and sort of, you know, like, hey, if you have Spell Pierce, I'm going to double spell. And we know Sarah doesn't have it, and Dykman now knows, all right, Spell Pierce.
Yeah, now the coast
probably
is clear.
a card we don't have to worry about. Yeah. Otherwise, you know, it's possible she held it, but also he has so much mana, he's going to be like, okay, coast is clear.
Yeah, and, you know, I like how Steven navigated this game. Now, you know, it's a question of whether or not you're supposed to cast the Borrower there. That's a really close decision. But, you know, Steven definitely paid off, and it looks like he, you know, is in a really good position now because I think there's not that many spells left over for the recast of Murktide. Might, you know, maybe be like a 5/5 or a 4/4. But yeah, Steven's going to get to be able to resolve a Violent Outburst here, most likely. Potentially could have land 6 and double Cascade spell, which is probably just game over if that happens.
Yeah, and we saw Dykman discard land and Fury, so he's looking for some specific cards. Doesn't want to just actually get Gemstone Cavern. If he goes double Rhino here, Sarah is in an unenviable position.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot to come back from. I'm not really sure that from this board state she could really come back from that, but we'll have to see what Steven has.
Yeah, you know, this was post board. Sarah would be able to beat that because she has the 3 EEs, but now not the case. We see just the main phase Violent Outburst to start things out. Dykman gonna find some Rhinos here.
What do you think Dykman's going to cascade into?
I was thinking Spell Pierce for a second there.
Remand?
Remand. Do it again. That's why he played the land first, you know?
Yeah.
Spell Pierce and lets him do it again. This whole little wombo and a combo.
The remands are perfect once you get the 6.
Well, Remand's really good against Murktide in multiple ways, right? You can remand the Murktide for the delve, and then you can cast your Brazen Borrower from the adventure, remand it, and then Petty Theft again. So you've got a couple angles.
Man, I like where we're going with this.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you can also play the white remand with Reprieve. We've got a lot of...
Well, then you're more likely to hit the remand, which I guess you're probably happy with.
Well, maybe you're playing Leyline Binding. You know, maybe you're more of a white version. You got
Okay.
Art in play. You see?
Yeah.
That's called innovation. That's called a Patreon article right there. Devin, write that one up. How much on the hizzy?
Write it down. Did you say hizzy?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just checking.
Sometimes
All right,
I just talk, man.
What's Sarah gonna do here? We got a channeler.
Here.
Now we know she has an Unholy Heat. I wonder if we still have Delirium. So I assume we have the Dress Down, which we kept, the Bauble, and a land. That's 3 types. So creature, yeah, there was a Ragavan. Okay,
Yeah.
so we do still have Delirium.
Yeah, and this Unholy Heat is going to answer the Rhino immediately. Dykman seems to be cool with it happening. He's double checking to make sure that, hey, I'm not getting got here right. Okay, this is Delirious. Even though obviously Sarah's Unholy Heat wouldn't do anything, but you know, if it was just an Unholy Heat for 2, he doesn't want to be like counter this one and then she not cast the second one. It's a Spire Bluff Canal for the turn, and we're going to see Brazen Borrower hard cast here, and that's going to put 7 power in play for Dykman here.
We also can't forget about the Fable flipping, which if Steven gets to untap with that, that represents another Rhino as well.
It's true. Yeah, Fable the Mirror Breaker is sort of a Magic All-Star.
It's good in every format.
Yeah.
Even Legacy.
Yeah, it's seriously great. I don't know much about Vintage, but I'm curious. You know, I know they're putting Atraxas into play. You know, Fable can be found off of Atraxa. So
that is
sort
a
of
good
strong
point.
pair. Yeah.
Can't copy Atraxa.
Yeah. My favorite thing about Fable, Devin, is that if Red does it in the color pie, Fable does it. We can make treasures, we got it. We rummage, we got it. We copy, we got it. We incentivize attacking, we got it. And it's like, what else is Red doing? They're like, it doesn't do anything else. Burn is like the one thing this doesn't do.
So is Fable bad design because it breaks the color pie?
No, it's perfect. It gets everything with red in one design. Now, maybe it does too much of, maybe it does too much selection versus smoothing, but definitely doesn't break color pie. It is just the red color pie.
It is the pie. It's the whole pie. Okay, I get it now.
As we are going to see a checking of the graveyard here, Devin thinking through his turn.
Devin thinking through his turn. I'm not playing.
I'm looking at you so we can see each other. I don't know why I keep saying that. I didn't ever do it with Dom. Your camera's just too clear. Dom's camera was just breaking up on me. What's happening? You know what it is? It's I'm used to seeing you play the Rhinos too.
Oh, okay. That's what it is. Yeah. I would be in this position. I mean, I'd be pretty happy if I was in the finals of an NRG Showdown event, You
would have won the RCQ. You'd be in.
Yeah, that's true. My RCQ struggles continue.
Yeah.
All right, what do we got from Dykman here? We see an attack. We got a trade from the channeler. Now, what do we have for Sarah for leftovers? I didn't quite get a good look. We know about the counterspell. That's what she took off of the expressive. I don't know that she really has much else though.
Yeah, I think it was counterspell and then like maybe a consider. I wasn't 100% sure.
Okay.
But like you mentioned too, this Fable is representing another Rhino, and so that's 8 damage. So cards like Fire are suddenly going to be lethal if Sarah cannot answer that Rhino in the next turn.
Oh,
she has the Murktide.
Murktide that we know about, yeah.
Yep.
So in these positions, in my experience, the Murktide player usually is 100% to draw expressive iterations. So we'll see if Sarah is in that position as well.
Sarah did lean forward after drawing. That's the gamer position. It might be because of Murktide, but it might be because of expressive.
I told you! I might profit.
Flip it, ship it, the shuffler's rigged.
Every time. There is never a position where a Murktide player gets into this spot and doesn't draw expressive iteration. It is just, it's a bug. It's an expressive bug.
Wow.
That's saying she had it in hand, but.
Sarah said already had it, so that's pretty great. Yeah, and maybe Devin, maybe we're just trying to get the rig in there, mentioning it there. But if you're enjoying the stream, make sure to follow. And yeah, whew. As we see expressive iteration here going off, and there's the third counterspell for Sarah. Her last expressive had a bunch of threats. This one looks to just have lands and counterspell.
Okay, not the best expressive. We'll take the counterspell for Sarah, though. Although, Sarah is behind on board. Not exactly what she's looking for. Definitely looking for a Bolter and Unholy Heat as well. Also, would like to mention we got over 1,000 viewers in the chat. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Hope you're having a great morning hanging out with us, watching some awesome Modern coverage. Be sure to hit that follow button if you are not already. And hope y'all are having a good time.
100%. As we do, I think it's a 5/5 Murktide. I saw like 3 lands there. We'll see in a second. It was a 5/5. Whew. I'm on my game today. We do have Counterspell up, and we still have that Otawara that's been hanging in our hand forever this game. As Dead Gone, the second Murktide gets bounced to the hand here. And we're going to see if Sarah, she has, 3 Counterspells in hand. Does this warrant it?
So we'll have to see if Steven has a second way to remove this Murktide from the battlefield. Now, shields down right now for Sarah. No, only 1 land up, so no Otawara, no Counterspell. So this is kind of a really big draw step here for Steven. See what he can find. Can copy the Rhino. That's 8 damage, which is not quite Sarah's life total, but if you could imagine, Steven goes bounce your Murktide, copy Rhino, put you to 2. It's going to be
no,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, Fury, that's going to do 4 damage to the Murktide. Sarah, I love, she didn't react to it. She's just like, yeah, and she's going to make Devin copy it with the Fable the Mirror Breaker if he is going to want to kill it and then present a lethal attack. He's going to have to play into Lightning Bolt and Unholy Heat here. As Sarah doesn't have either. She is down a game there. What a draw from Dykman. Wow. That was a crazy, awesome game 1 there. We saw just how Dykman respected Spell Piercing Counterspell for so long. As soon as he sort of sniffed out the coast was clear, he went for it. And Sarah played incredibly well, postured so well as if she actually had stuff the whole game, and made Dykman really think and play for it. That was an awesome game 1. I can't wait for game 2 and 3.
It really was like just a lot of, like you said, posturing, Sarah playing Shocklands untapped, making Steven believe that she had the Pierce the whole game. And Steven did buy it for quite a while up until that one turn where the Borrower resolved. And then that's where the game kind of really took a turn for Steven.
Yeah, and Sarah, still fought hard there. It's going to be exciting. So let's check out the sideboard and see what's going on here. We've looked at both these players' sideboards already, but we'll go over them again here for people that have joined us. So Sarah here, she has 3 Engineer Explosives, 2 Blood Moon, 2 Subtlety, 2 Unlicensed Hearts, the Fluster, the Spell Pierce, the Fury, the Season Pyro, the Abrade, and the Dress Down in her board. Devin, we talked about this last match. Do you think anything's changing from what we did before? And if not, what are we bringing in?
Engineered Explosives, Flusterstorm, and Spell Pierce. Likely we'll bring in the Fury as well. Those, I think, are all pretty easily slam dunks. Not a big fan of the bolts. And from there, the bolts and the dress downs, I think, are a medium. You could consider cutting a Spell Snare, but it does fight over Petty Theft, which is one of Steven's better answers to Murktide. So after those 4, not sure what you cut, but definitely I would say bring in those 6.
100%. And then let's check out Steven Dykman's plan here. As Steven has a much more condensed sideboard when it comes to available options. We have 4 Endurance, 4 Force of Vigor, 4 Mystical Dispute, 3 Blood Moon. Doomwake, what are we doing here?
So from Steven's side of things, I like the Disputes and the Endurances. I think those are pretty easily slam dunks. I am not generally a big fan of Force of Negation in this matchup. I think that trying to fight 2 for 1, the Murktide deck is really grindy. The games get pretty long. I don't really want to 2 for 1 myself with Force of Negation. And with Dispute, you can fight over counterspells postboard a little bit easier. And then from there, it's really tough to figure out what to cut. Sarah is almost 100% going to play around Fury. You could consider trimming a couple copies of those from Steven's side, maybe trim a Fable or 2, maybe trim a Fire Ice in the draw, but definitely wants the Endurances and definitely wants the Disputes.
Yeah, we're going to have to see exactly how they play out here, but this is a matchup that, like we talked about before, Sarah was talking before the tournament. She was like, I think, Rhinos and Creativity are going to be the 2 decks that I really want to sort of hard target in this event, and you can see that in her sideboard here, right? 3 EEs, 2 Blood Moons, all this sort of soft permission that's good against both Cascade and Indomitable Creativities. She came prepared for this matchup this weekend. She's in the finals with a great meta read and is getting rewarded. She might be down a game here versus Rhinos, but this is the matchup she sort of came prepared to beat.
Yeah, and if she does win this tournament, she'll have to have beaten 2 Rhinos players in the top 4. And yeah, like you said, Explosive's definitely a good metagame call. Pretty good against Creativity too, because you can kind of blow up the tokens that they target with Creativity. So yeah, definitely made a very good metagame call. And as we talked about before, I think actually Steven is slightly ahead in game 1, but once we get to the post-board games, I think Sarah with those Explosives is definitely a favorite, especially on the play for game 2 as well.
Yeah, the play is going to make a big difference, like you mentioned, sort of identified with us for match number 1 there today. And, at the beginning there, if Sarah's on the play during all this, she plays the expressive iteration a little bit sooner. She isn't under the gun as much. The Spell Pierce takes a little longer to be played around. Everything is just so different from the side of that matchup. And that might be the extra turn that Sarah needed. She had another Murktide. She had a big Murktide on board and had, Otawara. So the small differences can make the edge here.
Yeah, and play versus draw. I think Steven probably has the luxury of playing around Spell Pierce in the play. Likely not going to be able to do that on the draw. So we'll have to see, if Steven has the Cascade spell on 3 and Sarah has a mana up, does he jam it? He also has to worry about there's a third copy of Pierce as well as a Fluster in the sideboard. So, it's a little bit, it's really this like cat and mouse game, like, whether Steven plays around it, does Sarah represent it, things like that. So, that is a pretty interesting dynamic to the matchup as well.
Yeah, a lot of interesting things going on. We're going to have to see how both players choose to play it here. It's going to be very exciting. If you're liking the stream, make sure to follow that way you don't miss any of the action here. Even though this is the finals, we do have our Pioneer 5K going on at the same time. They're in the middle of round number 1 right now. So what's going to happen is we're going to finish this round. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to hop into round number 2. Devin and I are going to take you through most of those rounds. And we're going to have Dom Hobby and Joe Lissette take you all home for the rest of the day in the finals when it comes to the Pioneer 5K today. So a lot more Magic to be played. It's going to be very exciting, as even though the showdown is our straight to the finals, sort of Saturday is your one shot to make it to the thing, there are still a bunch of points on the line for the 5K. So if you're interested in the series race, like both of these players are for sure, you're going to want to play in those events and get those points and see what happens here. As it looks like Sarah is debating on whether to keep this 7 or not. She definitely has an engineered explosives in it. But I think her only land was an island. Dykman couldn't see what he had, but he also decided not worth it, going down to 6 for both players.
Yep.
Let's make sure. Let's just while we're shuffling, show me the slide for the next events here. Let me tell you about this, because you might be having fun. You might be watching this. You might be having a good time. If you want to play one of these, we're going to be in Minneapolis, May 20th through the 21st for a Saturday 10K Pioneer Showdown. And then Sunday, we're going to have a Modern 5K Trial. That showdown is just like today. If you win it, you go straight to our championship. You get the token and the RC invite. Worth mentioning, by the way, at all our events this year, every single Saturday and Sunday, we have our main events, which are RCs, but we also run side event RC queues in the middle of the day. So even if you bomb the main event, you can go and take another shot there. We have another event coming up we've already announced. It's going to be back in Mundelein, Illinois here, where this event was held this weekend. That is going to be on, I believe, June 24th and 25th. Got it down, as we have the Modern 10K Showdown and, Devin, the Legacy 5K Trial. Legacy, we rarely get to see in the paper these days, but here at NRG, we love it and we want to support it, and we're doing a 5K trial that Sunday.
I just want to see some attractions on camera. I don't know if you've had the luxury of seeing those in play yet, but that's all I want to see.
I brought it up with Dom yesterday. There's some things we don't have on Moto, so we're not sure if they actually are the truth or not. But having, a Legacy 5K like that could be a place to see, all right, will the best players come out with a deck like Attraction, testing and papers? It looks like Sarah is keeping a 6 here and bottoming a Flood Strand. Looks like Dykman is tanking. Unsure if he said keep or if he's maybe thinking about going to 5. Sarah does have a Spell Bluff Canal, ×2 in hand.
So, yeah, looks like we got 2 lands and Considerate Explosives. I want to say I saw a Shredder in there as well. So pretty good hand from Sarah.
Yeah, sort of most of what she's looking for there. Just really the Ragavan's the only thing she wishes she could draw up. As Dykman looks like he is keeping and putting back something. I'm really unsure too. It's probably going to be really close there. Probably some element he's trying to play around.
Yeah, I might also just want to be thinking about like how he wants to sequence his lands. A lot of times with my screen just got a lot bigger there. A lot of times with opening hands, you kind of want to like you want to see with like how you're going to sequence your lands before you decide to keep, because then like you're in a position where you can kind of just it's nicer to flow with it. You're just playing your lands and you already know what you're fetching for, so that could be a consideration as well.
Yeah, looks like Dykman's double checking. He thinks he may put his hand in backwards here. Definitely something I've done before too. You mulligan and you're like, wait, some of these cards don't feel the right direction. Yeah, I want to make sure everything's the right way, so we're not breaking any sleeves, etc. But yeah, no, I agree with what you said there. Also, both these players, have a buy into our Pioneer event, and so they're waiting for that next round to start. Although I think if you win here today, you're not super worried with how your Pioneer event goes. Obviously you want to win. Also getting the back-to-back open top 8, something only people like Roger Suleiman, Joseph Bernal, Will Kruger, I believe, have done on our circuit series. And joining that elite group would be very sick. And you only get to do that once you've top 8'd the first time. So there is a little bit of pressure, for going to that NRG Hall of Fame.
Right. Yeah, definitely. It's just an awesome tournament series. Really, shout out to NRG here, putting on an amazing show, and hope you all are having a great time watching it as we are getting into game number 2 here. Steven up a game, and yeah, these players are playing for a lot. There's a lot on the line here.
Yeah, Steven on a mold to 5 here, but I think has Gemstone Caverns in hand. And it looks like a Violent Outburst. We might have a turn 2 Cascade.
Gemstone Caverns a little sketchy on a 5-card hand, because then you're putting 2 back and you have to go Caverns pitch a card, so you're starting with 3 cards in your opening hand. But maybe Steven thinks that if he's already on 5 cards, that might be his best path to victory is just go to 5 Gemstone Caverns land, just jam it on turn 2, hope there's nothing there from Sarah. Now there's a lot of counterplay to that, so we'll have to see how Steven wants to manage this.
Yeah, Steven doesn't know if Sarah has her, marquee sideboard card and engineered explosives in hand. So if he goes all in on the Rhinos early, he's going to need some more because they probably will not go the distance. It looks like Dykman was maybe only going. Yeah, Dykman is only on 5 here. We're going to see if there are any pregame effects. Sort of tanking. I wonder if he is tanking on that.
Wow.
Yeah, he is. Oh, it was Caverns pitch Caverns. All right. Well,
then it's a little easier.
Lucky.
Yeah. See, you actually don't mind having that's like the perfect number of Caverns to have in your opening hand, because then it's an easy pitch.
Yeah, and Dykman's like, look at me, I'm on the play now. As he draws for turn, and we definitely had Violent Outburst in hand, so next turn we could be seeing Rhinos coming down immediately.
He is in the play, but he is in the play with 4 cards, so it's a little dicey here.
Yeah, that's because there's a luck counter on it.
That's true. See if we have an ice now. Suspend a Footfalls.
All right, and this is the marquee turn here where Sarah, and she knows that I know Footfalls could come down here, but she wants to immediately get stuff going, and she's going to immediately connive, get this Legislator big. Knows there aren't any Prismari commands from Dykman, so she doesn't need to worry about playing around that card. Just gets her connive off, try and sculpt her hand a little bit, and now Dykman knows, like, okay, well, if I'm committing these Rhinos, they are not long for this world.
Right. Very, very good setup here for Sarah. That's probably her best turn to setup here is just shred her into explosives. And we'll see a pass here from Steven. No 3rd land, so does not have the opportunity to cascade here. But as we talked about in the previous matchup where Sarah was playing against Rhinos, Suspend Footfalls actually not that bad against Sarah's setup, because she has 3 copies of Spell Pierce and 1 copy of Flusterstorm. So being able to kind of play around that soft counter magic is actually something that Steven really, doesn't mind having. Now does play around explosives, which, there's not really much counterplay that Steven has to that, but definitely good for against the soft counter magic.
Yeah, we're going to see Sarah here. She cast a Consider, then cast a Mishra's Ball, but got her connive off, discard Otawara. She seems to be a lot of lands there. She's going to look at her top card with Mishra's Bauble. She has that fetch land in place, sort of getting a little bit of a mini scry action going on. Looks like she's happy with that top card, and she's going to take it. Dykman on 2 lands. Didn't slam a land, but here it comes. Wooded Foothills.
It does have the 3rd land here. Have to see if we have a Cascade spell from Dykman.
Definitely had Outburst, and definitely has Dead Guard in hand too, so might see an instep unsummon or something like that. A lot of different plays available to Dykman, as it looks like Sarah's going to start off with another Consider on this turn.
Yeah, we're doing. Looks like she's going to bid a counterspell.
Counterspell, you say?
No, right? Probably just looking for another threat, maybe looking for a Murktide. Couldn't quite get a good glimpse of her hand as to what we got for the leftovers, but
yeah, I'm unsure too. But I know that if I'm Dykman, that's a real wow. I am on a multiplied, and she just bend counterspell.
I know, right? That's not where you want to be for that. Dykman does not like to see that.
Yeah, it looks like we discarded some spell there, a little bit off camera. We can't tell exactly what it is, but we do have this Legislator getting bigger. And it looks like Sarah is going to pass the turn now, respecting Endurance like we saw her do in the semifinals of our tournament. Looks like she discarded Ragavan here from the Connive. No real plans for our Pirate Monkey this game.
All right. Ketria Triome is going to be the land that's fetched here. Yeah. She maybe is worried about Steven might have a couple dead gons that weren't that he couldn't use or didn't have a good target for, so it might make sense to bin the Ragavan because of that.
Yep. Yeah, it also looks like from looking at her hand, she has a good amount of permission and just wants to keep the permission and has another bauble to trigger Connive. So she's just sort of being like, whatever, I'm going to turn some extra lands into stuff here. And she does want to grow her Rhino. I'm sorry, the Legislator to outsize Rhinos if she needs to block, because even though she has the EE, she doesn't want to necessarily use it just on one Rhinos, right? She sort of wants to get through the second copy of Crashing Footfalls with that one EE.
Yeah, and the one thing that you want that we did talk about in the previous matchup here of Rhinos versus Murktide is the staggering of the Rhinos. Because there's a face-up explosives, you don't want to necessarily, like, say, for example, Steven were to just jam a Cascade spell here. You'd make some Rhinos, Sarah would say, okay, that's fine. Then the one on Suspend resolves, and then you get 4 Rhinos with the explosives. So Steven has to play a little bit carefully to make sure he's managing the battlefield in the sense of not overcommitting into that explosives. So he wants to make sure we do that as well.
Third turn in a row, Sarah goes, consider bin card, play Bobble, connive. She is a huge fan of this. In her hand is Counterspell, Expressive Iteration, Steam Vents, and an unknown card I can't make out right now. And she's just figuring out this connive, and it looks like she's going to discard the Steam Vents. Take a look at herself here.
Discarding. We discard the Steam Vents. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So you are safe to attack into an Endurance. You won't lose your Ledger Shredder. You might get blocked, but you won't lose it. Dykman here taking a little think. Dykman, we've seen, has played with a lot of patience this game, respecting what Sarah could be doing, respecting Spell Pierce, respecting, her available options. Someone of his caliber of players played so much, it's really, knows that he's not under enough pressure, doesn't need to do anything. And now the time's coming, he can start thinking about actually making plays.
Right. And, the issue for Dykman here is Sarah has just been kind of given infinite time to sculpt this entire game. Dykman has put zero pressure on Sarah. So, Sarah's getting in some chip shots here with the Shredder, but really just sculpting her hand and making sure that she's ready for this inevitable big fight, which may or may not be over the Crashing Footfalls. She also may not really care about the first Footfalls because she has the explosives. But yeah, like you mentioned earlier, when Sarah bins a counterspell off of that, it's like, what do you do what do you think is in her hand from Steven's side of things?
Yeah, it's a moment where maybe if she had 2 lands, it's like, okay, she's bending the counterspell to keep a land or find a land. That makes sense. But with Sarah having 3 or 4 lands at that time, it's just a moment of like, okay, what's going on here? Also, you might notice there's 2 lands underneath that gemstone. That's because it has a luck counter on it. And we are going to see Dead Gone use the Gone mode on the Shredder. And Sarah's like, yeah, all right, cool.
And I kind of like this play because if you expect that you're going to be playing 2 spells this turn, I think there's a chance that maybe Steven has something that he wants to play in his main phase, either a Fable or a Fury. And if you expect to be able to go Crashing Footfalls, land into Fury, you don't want to let you don't want to leave the Shredder in play because you don't want to give Sarah another connive.
Yep. You might also just bait a counterspell, right? Like, Sarah has counterspell. You also know that she was willing to get rid of another counterspell. So you might get her to use something like a Spell Pierce here or whatever. And that might just favor you in the long term to actually get her to use it now. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And you have to just assume that Sarah's hand is just all reactive, given that she binned that counterspell. She probably, felt like she had enough reactive answers at that point. So we'll, have to see what Steven's follow-up is here. My guess is he's probably going to be going Footfalls off Suspend and then casting a Fury this turn. That would be my guess based on the EOT bounce the Shredder, but we'll have to see what Steven does. And Sarah's not going to fight over this because she has the explosives.
Yeah.
Steven assumed she wasn't going to, but now she's thinking.
Yeah, Sarah, drew a card from the bauble for the beginning of Steven's turn, drew Murktide Regent. So her hand is Ledger, Murktide, Expressive, double counterspell. And Sarah's sort of figuring out, like, okay, is my mana spent for the next 2 turns? Is he going to do anything else I care about? This EE is like, sort of my plan for the long term, but do I want to, hold this for later? And I respect this sort of thing. I was talking to Sarah about this recently, where it's just like, the play might be obvious, whatever, but you can take a second to sort of think through and like, have things change? Do I want to do it or not? I don't know what the right play is, but I can totally respect, like, yeah, I've got this card countered, but whatever, like, is there anything that Dykman can really do that I care about? The answer might be yes, but Sarah's deciding that, for right now, my E is going to be answering the future Rhino problems.
Interesting to fight over that, because I don't see a red card in her hand to be able to answer a Fury. So, if Steven does have something like land 5 plus Fury, I think her hand's all blue cards. I guess she has a Murktide, so maybe Murktide can check the Fury. So maybe that's her logic there, which I guess makes sense. That is a good point. And it's also just nice to use her mana while she can.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a really close play.
Yeah, it's super close, and it's really one of those decisions, where some people will be like, oh, that's a misplay, oh, that's this. This is called like a tactical decision, Twitch chat, right? Like, Sarah's making a choice to use counterspell here to save the future EEs later to, maybe set up for that 8/8 Murktide, right? Like, Sarah might be keeping a running count of the instant sorcery in her graveyard. People doing that. So we're going to see. It's asking sort of what's going on. We had 3 Rhino players in our top 4 and Sarah. So Oliver did lose to Dykman here. As Sarah, she's pulling up her graveyard. Got a bunch of instants. There's a bunch of considers, a bunch of counter spells, and they're all going to the exile zone because Sarah wants to cast something. I'm curious to see if she'll fetch first here or if she wants to save that for, a bauble / other stuff going on.
This is like the classic Nassif setting up his ultimatum mana, just Sarah setting up her Murktide exile pile.
Yep. Dykman's going to take a second, and it looks like a mystical
dispute. Ooh. All right, so Sarah's going to fight back. She does have another copy of Counterspell, I believe. So we'll have to see if Steven has another mystical dispute. That, as to why Steven didn't play a threat that turn, that could make sense. Maybe Steven's hand is all reactive as well. So we'll have to see what we have here.
Yeah, it might also be a moment where Steven was playing around a card like Spell Pierce, like Flusterstorm, it's like, hey, I can hold this extra mana. Looks like Counterspell is going to resolve because, Dykman said no worries there. And he's got 3 mana, and it looks like this could, be the Violent Outburst that we knew was in the hand from turn 1. With so much patience, finally gets it resolved for sure. Even though there's an EE on board. Oh, perfect timing. The optimal way. Save us some life and save you a draw step.
Yeah, and if Steven does have a follow-up bounce spell here, getting in 8 damage while there's an engineered explosives in play, it looks like there is a borrower as well. So this was really well navigated by Steven. It's not very often that you're going to be able to get a hit in with Rhinos under, versus an active explosives, but very, very well navigated by Steven here and getting rewarded for his sequencing.
Yeah. And you know what? Thinking about the last couple turn cycle, it makes sense why Sarah used that counterspell, right? She thought it was managing soon for the next couple turns. She knew more Rhinos were coming. And it's sort of going to play out that way here too, because she tries to redevelop Murktide. She's going to, have to probably EE down these Rhinos. As Dykman is thinking about if he wants to play anything here, we might be seeing him in ice in the upkeep or just going to play a land here, figuring out if he wants to posture a card or not.
Wants to hold up the borrower. Definitely would play the land there. So Sarah's going to go Shredder. My guess is Shredder pass. Interesting. Yeah. Wonder why we didn't redeploy the Murktide there. Then you could go Murktide, hold up the engineered explosives. Not enough cards in the graveyard, maybe, or not enough spells.
Yeah, it might be a spot where maybe the spells in the graveyard is just a 4/4 Murktide.
Yeah,
she did do that really quickly, which makes me sort of curious about what's going on. It could also just be a moment of she's just like pre-planned to kill these Rhinos no matter what happens. So she wants to have a connive in case Dykman main phase 2s a Shardless Agent. And so this would be slightly better in that scenario.
Sure, that's fair. And she's like, maybe she's assuming that she's not going to trade the Shredder for the Borrower because that Steven's going to cast the Borrower here. Yeah. But maybe, because I was going to say you could have a counter spell for the Borrower, but you can't afford to take another hit from the Rhinos. So definitely can't, even if Sarah had a counter spell left over, she wouldn't really be able to cast it here. The 2 mana definitely saved for the explosives. So big draw step here from Steven. I think it was a red card. See if it was a Fury.
If it was Fury, that is going to be a game potentially ending play here because Sarah doesn't have a counterspell anymore. She used it earlier in the game. She'd been another one, and the Rhinos, are going to be big enough to have to force the EE, and then your Murktide probably just has to jump/trade with the Fury. We are going to see the EE get popped here, and looks like Sarah's taking a double check in her hand. She has Unholy Heat in hand, so that's going to be able to help check a Fury now. We'll probably rehab Delirium with the Engineered Explosives on the Mishra's Baubles, but let's see what Dykman did draw. Yeah, Fable would be really good here.
Yeah, Fable would be nice because that gets you the 2/2. If you draw a brick next turn, that kind of helps loot and finds you more gas. Just provides a lot of value. Because I imagine if there was a Fury, you probably would have Furied pre-combat. So we're thinking about something here for Steven. Let's see what it is.
All right, looks like it's 3 mana. He's trying to figure out if there's some reason to hold something up. I know maybe it is 2. Oh, it's ice to get a redraw. Okay.
Oh, and he wants the main phase cycle in case he draws Shardless. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Well, didn't hit Shardless, but did hit Suspend on the Crashing Footfalls. So that's going to reward Dykman. You got to love when tight play gets rewarded like that there. Doesn't even have the connive punish from Sarah. Sarah main phase slams this EI. She's like, look, I need to get a little bit more tools to fight these fights now. I am out from underneath my safety blanket that was EE. Actually, I think she finds Ledger Shredder land. A Ledger Shredder Spell Pierce, sorry.
Shredder, 2 Shredders. Shredder, Land Pierce. Okay, gotcha. So now we can go second Shredder, connive the first one. I got to imagine there's enough to play a Murktide, especially with the iteration in the graveyard, because we already know about the other counter spell from before. So it's at least a 5/5. So if we have an untapped land here, we could see, Shredder into Murktide, just put a lot of stuff on the battlefield and make it really hard for Steven to because Steven has no pressure in play, so Sarah is pretty good at racing. And then with the two Shredders in play, even if Steven were to draw his best possible card, which is Shardless Agent, that would give Sarah a lot more looks as well.
Yeah, I also want to highlight how well Sarah played that EI there. Not only did she realize she needs to keep the land to do what you just talked about, but she put the land in hand, because putting the land in hand allows her to connive it away off the Legislator here if she ends up drawing the island she wants to play, which will save her a life and give her a little bit more selection. Typically, players just throw the land in exile, then play it, cast it, the Shredder from hand. These small little things are why she is in the finals right now, as we are going to see, some fetching happening here. It ended up not going down that way, but it easily could have.
Right. Let me my screen keeps resizing. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I took a screenshot of mine. I made the screen very small.
There's an arrow. There's an arrow on the top right. If you click on that, it should hide the chat.
Yeah. I don't trust Twitch chat as is, so they're gone now.
Yeah.
Looks like we are sort of figuring out, okay, do we have Delirium? Can I keep Delirium? How big do I want my Murktide to be? These Shredders also sort of beta Fury, so we're going to see exactly what happens here. It looks like the Murktide's just a 4/4, big enough to trade with the Rhino, and also, importantly, eat that Brazen Borrower. Probably means Sarah left Delirium in her graveyard there for Unholy Heat, as Dykman will at some point cut her deck and then draw for turn. And this is a big draw set for Dykman. He's played this Moldify very well, but he is sort of falling behind now.
Looks like it was a Scalding Tarn. That's probably going to be enough here. Don't really think, maybe if we saw a Fury off of the top for Steven, that could have been enough. Maybe you Fury the Murktide, you can get in with the Borrower. Maybe Sarah trades, maybe she doesn't, and then you have the Fury left over. But bricking that draw step probably means this game is over.
Yeah, it's gonna be really hard for Dykman to come back from this spot. But Dykman, is in the finals. It's got some time still left. Maybe Dykman isn't super excited to go play Pioneer. We'll have to see what Dykman brought for that one. But, got a little bit of time, and it can't hurt. If Sarah just for some reason freezes up, passes the turn or something, misevaluates her role, that could be a good way to win. As we do see a dash Ragavan here, Dykman's like, still a Scalding Tarn, resolves.
Just take a peek just to make sure. Maybe a change into something else.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen Yu-Gi-Oh! Before, but the cards have changed.
That is true. That is a very good point.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever read OG Yu-Gi-Oh! Before it became all about duel monsters?
Oh, like the anime stuff?
Yeah, well, I recently started reading the manga, and it's like Yugi plays death games. He kills people. It's crazy.
There's some weird stuff going on.
It's wild indeed. And speaking of wild, Sarah's trying to figure out, okay, do I want to cast another spell, trigger this connive? Do I want to, attack this 1/3 Legislator if I'm not going to connive in to this Brazen Borrower? Also, do I want Unholy Heat, use that here in order to push this damage and get the connives off? It's really, really close, because if you use the Unholy Heat here, maybe Brazen Borrower unsummons and blocks, she could be in huge trouble at just 6 life. And looks like, she's going to respect Brazen Borrower being the draw from Dykman here and just attack for 6. I love this respectful play.
Yep, because now Dykman's in a spot where he just takes it. Yep, goes to 6. Has a Barber to chump block next turn. And then potentially taking 5, but there's a Heat for the Barber. So, even if Steven draws a Fury at this point, I guess you can Fury at the Murktide, potentially trade for the other Shredder. Take 2, but we'll have to see what.
It's gonna be hard for Dykman. I do like that. One nice thing about Ragavan is whenever it hits a land, when you're on the other side of Ragavan, especially when Dykman's position, it's like, all right, well, I didn't need that. Just get a little redraw from me. Yeah,
not drawing another land at least.
Yeah. It's sort of like get probe draw land for Dykman. Take 2, As we do see Sarah untap here again. We're going to see Sarah probably dash at Ragavan. That's what we did last turn. Yeah, she's doing that.
Dash.
She's going to cast a bauble. That's going to get double connive off. Yeah, we need to clarify which treasure shredder is going where. Very small, minute things. It wasn't announced, I think, is what's happening here. And so they're going to have a moment of trying to figure out, okay, what's going on? This might be a small warning or something like that. Who really knows? We know from the booth it doesn't really matter in this spot, but Tactical Magic does sort of demand this of us. So, it's probably fine here.
Right, and the logic here is you have to stack the triggers before you see what you draw, because if you just say, okay, I'll discard a spell, put a counter on this one, and then you know what I mean. But what you want to do is you want to stack the triggers so that you say like the one without a counter is resolving first, then you draw, do that, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it looks like the judge's fix was probably gave a warning there, and it's just going to redo the connive here. We have the stream, and the judge saw the card, so they're able to confirm what the card was. Typically, you can't do this in a normal on-the-floor match, but here we're able to do these sort of things, as it looks like we went left to right there. So now we have 2/2/4 Ledger Shredders, which is really big at stopping this Brazen Borrower from ever connecting.
Yep, and Sarah definitely lining up looks like a lethal attack. Don't really think that Steven has any way out, and we'll have to see if Steven agrees.
Yeah, he's going to pick up the cards. Even a Brazen Borrower here, we're going to save the day. So we're on to game number 3 and our first NRG Series event of the year here for Mundelein. Wow, that was a crazy game number 2 there as well. Dykman, on 5 cards, didn't get to do as much as he did in game number 1, but still made a real game of it, and, made Sarah think about some stuff and played around the EE incredibly well. We saw Sarah not only be up 2 cards on Dykman, but had the incredible Ledger Shredder into EE, sort of the perfect turn 2, and he made a real game of it.
He did, and navigated it very well. Was able to set up a spot where was able to end step that Violent Outburst with the explosives in play to get in that 8 points of damage. Maybe was a spell or 2 away from potentially clawing back into that. But yeah, very well navigated by both players, and I'm really excited to see what happens in game 3. These are probably 2 of the best players that we have in the room, and we got them both in the finals, and this is sure to be a really, really, really good game.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really good here. Sarah, like I mentioned earlier, this is her first NRG Series top 8. She's wanted to make a run at the Player Championship this year. But what we didn't mention before, Devin, is that she has, I think, 3 or 4 top 8 misses, a bunch of 9s and 10s. So it's not like she wasn't, this isn't like, I've made it in here. She basically got breakered out, has a bunch of good top 16 finishes. And, I know this was a real thing for her of just being like, okay, can I get like that extra 0.1 match percentage point? Can I just make it into the top 8, please? So I know I can do it, but I'd like to actually do it. And here we are now. She's making the most of it, running all the way up into our final. She's going to be on the draw here. As we talked about before, play draw, very important in this matchup. But she does sort of have the sideboard, and we've seen Dykman respect Spell Pierce, Flusterstorm this whole match so far, and Sarah hasn't had it. She's got to draw them eventually.
That's true. Was able to navigate with the explosives. But, as we saw in game 1, remember, Steven Dykman was very apt to play around Spell Pierce in that first game. So I would not be surprised if, because Steven is now on the play, obviously mulligans to 5 changes things and depends. But if, so very similar to what we saw at game 1, where Steven just kind of didn't do anything for the first 3 or 4 turns and just really respecting those Spell Pierces. So very interested to see if Steven plays around them and if Sarah, kind of represents or basically just kind of bluffs it.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see. And if you're enjoying this, make sure to click that follow button right now. We're happy to have so many of you here in the chat. We run these events just about every month-ish or so this year, and it's going to be really exciting to sort of see all of those come down. And you're not want to miss any magic, even when this is done here today. This is our continuation of yesterday's Modern 10K. We still have a Pioneer 5K today. Maybe I can get behind the scenes how many players and how many rounds that's going to be. But Devin and I, when we're done commentating this finals, we're going to start on commentating Pioneer right away. We're going to take a short little second to get players in the feature match area. But that's basically to say there's going to be nonstop magic here on the stream today. Because when we're done commentating those rounds, we're going to have Devin O'Donnell and Devin and I are done. We're going to have Dom Harvey and Joe Lissette join in, and they're going to take you home tonight. So it's going to be fun. So make sure to click that follow button if you haven't already. And drop a Twitch Prime if you like Devin's camera. Look how clear and clean and everything you can see us. I got to go to whatever camera you have. We're going to have to talk off screen. But while we're sort of doing that, I do want to talk about the future events, because you might be having fun. You might be thinking, wow, this is awesome. I want to make a run at the NRG Series. And you totally can, because just because you missed the first event doesn't mean you're dead for the Players' Championship. Every single person who wins one of our events today, just like Dykman or Sarah here, is going to make it to our championship. And we have 2 more events already announced here. So we have the Minneapolis, we have Saturday, we have a Pioneer Showdown, and Sunday a Modern 5K Trial. That's going to be May 20th through the 21st in Minneapolis there. That is going to be super fun. Once again, the showdown events are the ones that straight up queue you. So if you're willing to do that, you're going to want to show up for the Saturday event for sure. It's still a lot of fun, though, to be on Sunday. And if you're making a run of our at-large bids, both events award points. So just because you don't get that auto win for winning the Pioneer event in Minneapolis doesn't mean it's not worth something. I believe it's about 20 points. It's a huge chunk on our leaderboard. There's also going to be an event back here in Mundelein on June 24th and 25th. It's going to be Modern and Legacy, so see you there. We're back in the feature match area. That looks like players have kept unsure about their keeps on how many cards we have. But I do know one thing. Sarah's on the draw and has turn 1 Ragavan again. It wasn't good enough game 1. Let's see if it's good enough here.
And no turn 1 Crashing Footfall for Steven. Now, Steven does have a lot of powerful turn 2 plays. Could Dead Gone the Ragavan, could even go end step Dead Gone, which looks like we're not going to see that. But does have Fire Ice, and that's kind of a decision point here for Steven is like, if you have Fire Ice, do you kill the Ragavan or do you ice a land? I mean, you very likely just kill the Ragavan because that produces a mana source. But the other thing is like, okay, well, do you think that Sarah's going to play her on Fire Ice? Maybe she deploys a copy of Dragon's Rage Channeler. You get both of them. So really a lot to think about here for Steven. And I think it depends on how his hand is lined up to, see how he wants to navigate this game.
100%. So this looks like Sarah has Expressive Iteration, some lands, a DRC in hand, and I think that's a Consider and a Murktide. So Sarah was very much another aggressive hand, like in game 1 where she didn't really have the permission, but she did an amazing job of posturing. So I'm really excited to see what she does here. As she just picked up another Expressive Iteration. This Ragavan, the good thing about it is even if it doesn't hit any cards like we talked about before, a little hard to find some stuff you want from the Rhinos deck to play early. You do get that treasure, which what is a treasure if not a Lotus Petal, Devin?
I mean, kind of the same thing.
Shardless Agent.
Ooh, we could cast that. It is a 2/2. What's the best hit? Probably Shredder. Oh, I really hope she casts it. Oh, explosives. Yeah, that would be.
Yeah.
Oh boy, that would be a good one.
Yeah,
I guess there's not a ton of bricks, but
yeah, she's not casting it there. She says push that aside. Looks like she is going to cast something though because she's prefetching this island. Might be a situation where she's going to cast DRC and just wants to have counterspell magic up and respect it. But no, it looks like she actually just has her own letter Shredder. Why cascade for Shredder when can cast Shredder?
See if she has the engineered explosives as a follow-up. That would be a big turn. Looks like not. Oh, we're thinking about playing a spell. Okay, there's the Channeler. You really saw her hesitate there a little bit because I think she's either worried. Again, this is the situation we talked about. Now, Fire Ice just gets to kill the Ragavan and the Channeler because we're not even close to Delirium. So we'll have to see if Steven has the Fire Ice and if he was rewarded for his patience.
Yeah, 100% is going to be really interesting here. Also, Sarah choosing to discard Consider over Expressive Iteration right now. She, has a multitude of both, but, sort of light on lands here. So she's having to make a couple decisions about can she play the long game? What can she do here? So, Expressive Iteration stronger than Consider before, but I'm going to say this, and this is pretty bold here, Devin. So if you don't want to stand with me on this hill, I understand. 1 mana, half as much as 2 mana.
Wait, that's how that works? I'm not good at math, but I'll take your word for it.
I understand that I'm an innovator, bold on this frontier, but we're going to see how it pays off here because Expressive Iteration is a messed up Magic card.
Some would say that you're a pioneer.
Yes, some would say a pioneer. Much like my ancestor, Lewis and Clark. Actually,
what do we got
Clark's last name. I don't know. What was his first name?
We got no Fire Ice here for Steven. So this is, facing down a lot of pressure here. Maybe something like a Fury could clean up, say, either the Shredder or likely just the Ragavan and the Channeler. We'll have to see if there's a Cascade spell. A lot of things to think about for Steven. Now, if we take a look, looks like I can see a Murktide, a Fable, I think a Fury. Second Fable. I think a Fury as well. So you might see something like Fury, pitch Fable, play Fable. But it's awkward because you want to get value out of the Fury by killing 2 creatures, but then you're not killing the Ledger Shredder, which also lets Sarah connive. So it's a tough spot here for Dykman.
Mm-hmm. This is going to be really interesting to see here what's going on. Because Sarah, I think, does have Murktide in her hand too, right? Little iPhone action.
There's a lot of I saw a lot of gold cards in Sarah's hand. I don't know if you took a look, but there's a lot.
Yeah, I saw the 2 EI. Yeah,
a lot of expression in Sarah's hand.
Well, she's been known to iterate here.
Yeah,
so it's a little bit why I was surprised to not see the second Expressive Iteration discard, just because her hand was so creature heavy. I thought she would just want to keep the Consider as sort of like a double Lotus Petal for Murktide situation, get stuff there, but.
Mason, did you just suggest discarding an Expressive Iteration? Who are you?
I am Mason Clark. It's nice to meet you, Devin. Sometimes I do crazy stuff, and sometimes, I value a mana. I have a lot of respect for the mana system, as we are going to see Fury get rid of the Legislator here, and then we're just going to Violent Outburst, get in our 4/4s here. No engineered explosives at the moment, and just going to, sort of go off and see what we have here.
And noticeably chose to kill the Ledger Shredder, so chose to kill one creature as opposed to two, which normally, as we said before, two is twice as much as one, which I know is very surprising to some people. But I like that. I like that choice to only kill the Shredder because A, you don't want to let Sarah connive, and B, the Rhinos kind of checks the Ragavan anyways, and I guess you're letting Sarah have the Channeler, but it's pretty close. So I think I like that play by Steven.
Yeah, Sarah kept a Bauble on top with the connive, it seems, and then now is tanking on what else to do on this turn. Just put some card in hand.
Really looking for that sideboard card. We got to find a copy of Explosives here. Now, I think Sarah might still have an Unholy Heat. I can't remember if she did or not.
Yeah, I'm a little unsure as well.
Because I have to imagine we're Delirious, right?
Yeah, we're now Delirious, which means we have to attack, which is probably what we want to be doing anyways. We can't be really blocking these Rhinos too profitably. Although I guess you could have done it main phase 2 and double block to kill a Rhino. Something there, but
I don't know, though. With Steven at 12, you get a 3/3, especially if you have a Heat to follow up next turn to kill one of these Rhinos. You're probably just in a position where you can win the race.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. She main phase fetched the island here, too. That's going to make it harder for her to get got with this Spell Pierce in hand. I'm really curious to see sort of how she positions these turns, because this next turn cycle or so for both players is really going to dictate the rest of the game. Barring a top deck of some card that swings the matchup a lot, both players have most of the tools they're going to have for the rest of the game, and we're going to have to play from this spot, and these decisions are make or break ones here.
Right, and so interesting there. Sarah fetching main phase, fetching for because she knew the top card of her library with Bauble. Okay, understandable. Yes. I wonder if it's tough there. I wonder if you're supposed to shock to just for the upside of drawing on Holy Heat there. Maybe she figured that her life total is under pressure a little bit too much. Also, going from 18 to 16 is really bad when there's 2 4/4s in play. So it's a really close decision there. But I think, no one Holy Heat. But she did find the Explosives.
I was going to say, Devin, she found the Explosives. You pointed out, I didn't even notice it there until you started talking about it. And wow, that is so huge. And holding it here and sort of setting up now, she knows there's 0 chance to die. There's no Become Immense in this deck. There's nothing that can actually kill her this turn. But what might happen is Dykman might be like, listen, I need to just play like a Shardless Agent or something this turn. I need to work through some things, get some more Rhinos on board. And Sarah will just blow this game wide open if that is Dykman's play. Looks like Dykman's going to use 2 mana, maybe using some sort of Murktide Regent. That's a huge one. Sarah doesn't have a card like Mystical Dispute here, and the Engineered Explosive doesn't answer that card at all.
I think 3 counters, if I'm doing my math. I think there's 2 Rhinos and an Outburst, I think.
That sounds right to me, I believe.
We'll just see what the die is, too. Okay,
that's a Rhino. Okay.
Yeah, okay. So 5/5 Murktide, pretty good here for Steven. And that is very, very nice because as we talked about, the Explosives cleans up the Rhinos. Steven didn't, even if Steven had a Cascade spell, really doesn't want to deploy another Shardless because he knows about the possibility of Sarah having that Engineered Explosive. So very, very good for Steven to diversify his threat base here. Sarah's likely going to take 8, fall down to 10. Maybe she doesn't have a 4th land. So if there's an Explosives, can't really double spell profitably, because ideally Sarah would want to go Murktide Regent, Explosives, pop the Explosives, then have Murktide to check Stevens, but maybe she doesn't have the luxury of doing that.
Yeah, Sarah really wants to draw the card Unholy Heat this turn. That is one that will just clear up this whole board. She can kill the Murktide, then pop the EE on the Rhinos. It looks like Sarah's going to actually just move to combat here, and I love this attack with both. Much going to get blocked, and if he decides, maybe I need to kill this DRC, you maybe get a card that can solve the problem. Sarah here does have Murktide in hand and 2 EEs. She picked up another EE on the turn cycle, so future Rhinos are not going to be a problem.
Yeah, 2nd copy of Explosives. Now, I wonder, do you call here for Steven's side of things? Because obviously the attack is forced here from Sarah. This is a tough spot to be in for Steven. I don't know. You probably have to call. It's really close. Being at 9 life too. Can you afford to take 3 more?
On Well, Steven took
Oh,
the
this is-
3 because he
Steven did
blocked
take the
monkey.
3. This is post combat. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. My
Yep.
bad.
Oh, yeah.
I was
And
looking at
so
chat for a second.
you're good. Oh, it looks like Sarah's actually going to cast EI this turn. Very interesting. I thought we were going to see Engineered Explosives and a Murktide here and just have like a 7/7 Murktide. You know, if you have a 7/7 Murktide, they actually can block the opposing Murktide and beat Violent Outburst. But it looks like Sarah might be respecting the card Mystical Dispute here.
Interesting. Okay. We'll have to see. So we know about the 2 explosives in Sarah's hand. I believe she still may have had another expressive iteration. I'm curious to see what the leftovers are. Probably wants to try and find either maybe she has a land trying to find an unholy heat, or maybe she has the heat looking for a land. We'll have to see what she has.
Yeah. And she does have this Bauble plus fetch land. That's going to let her control the top of her deck just a little bit. So that top card isn't what she wants. She can get a redraw on it. But she is going to take 5 from this Murktide if Dykman wants it. You know, Dykman maybe just will have a weaker hand and choose to eat the DRC and combat the next turn instead of attacking. But yeah, Sarah's grabbing another island here because she's pressuring her life total. And she's actually just choked on red mana. Right. Maybe she drew a land here off the expressive and I missed it. But this EE on 0, it's got to come down sooner or later.
Yeah, she's basically forced to play it this turn to, blunt the attack for next turn. But I mean, at 9 life, facing down a 5/5 Murktide Regent, this is really kind of this is going to be a tricky position. We'll have to see. Again, this is all really comes down to what Steven's leftovers are.
She kept the card on top with the Surveil. It's an Unholy Heat. That's big for answering the Murktide later. Sarah is in a very tricky spot here, but if Dykman's going on the big attack, he's going to force the EE pop. He's going to put Sarah down to 4. Double Fire Ice wins the game here. Also, every future Rhino is now a lethal attacker. So Dykman, has a card like Violent Outburst or whatever, can go the distance. And I think Dykman drew Endurance for the turn.
Yep. Endurance land Fable is the hand. So do you play Endurance or do you play Fable? I like main phase the Endurance here.
You got to get the Endurance down.
Yep.
It stops Murktide. It stops Unholy Heat. It actually probably just kills Sarah. And yeah, Sarah not deploying that Murktide last turn comes back and gets her. She played around Mystical Dispute, and you can see she's shuffling her hand here. She knows I can't play this Murktide next turn almost regardless of what I do.
That is such a massive turn there for Steven. And not like you said, not only blanks the Murktide, blanks the Unholy Heat. I think a lot of people might want to get a little bit, greedy there and try to mid-combat the Endurance, like eat the Channeler, quote unquote. But yeah, really, really heads up play for Steven. And that is extremely backbreaking. Because now it's unlikely that Sarah can get to Delirium to turn back on this heat, which she kind of has to do this turn.
Yeah, she also needs to do this in main phase too. If she's going to maybe get Delirium, she needs to not be able to force the DRC into the Endurance. So she needs to move to that stage there before excellent getting there. Obviously, she might be in a spot where she can delve everything away, but it's really possible that Sarah's going to have to just play a Murktide, not be able to play a Murktide Regent, have to chump block here and go to 1. So she needs to be really careful about the sort of situation. And also, we talked about before, look, that's the expressive iteration we kept in our hand early in the games coming back to get us a little bit because we don't have the Consider to bin more cards and get a Murktide Regent in play. So Dykman played this game really well. Sarah's played really well too, but this respecting of the damage of everything with the islands and then keeping the expressive for a longer game might be coming back together here, as she does have a Spiral Bluff in hand as a red source, but that's going to enter tapped.
Right. And yeah, like you said, we talked about just Sarah, she's really choked on red mana, did prioritize not shocking early on turns that she, potentially could have. Now, that being said, she's at 4 life. So an extra shock there, might have ended up costing her. But yeah, just like you said, just really, really choked on red mana. Not a lot of options here. Staring at that sideboard card, Engineered Explosives, not good enough here. Doesn't really do much on this board. We got, looks like Unholy Heat doesn't do a ton. And yeah, this is a really tough spot.
EE does get you the Surveil. You can bin anything off this and play your Murktide Regent. Now, if your Murktide Regent doesn't hit an instant or sorcery here, you won't be able to block the opposing Murktide profitably, but you will be in a spot where you're not dead, and not dead is pretty good.
The other thing that maybe is in consideration here is EE, bin a 3rd type, tap 2 islands, crack EE, and then heat bin the 4th type off of the Surveil or something along those lines. You could pass, bin the 4th type, block with the Channeler, and then heat the Murktide after block. So a lot of things to think about here. So we see Sarah going in the tank here for sure. And I wonder what she's looking at here. So we have what instant land right now, plus the artifact. We'd have to find a sorcery or a creature to take that line.
Yeah, and I think your line's to play. She probably does it this turn to play around Mystical Dispute. We saw her play around that last turn, and that's still up, so that could be a card that could actually stop this line. But you're right. If she bends creature or sorcery here, she is able to do what you said there, and the Murktide's gone. Now she does have hard cast the Murktide Regent. You lose to Dispute. You can't stop it, though. We're in a position where we can't beat that card anymore. And yeah, this Murktide Regent can come down. It will be a 5/5. It will, trade with the opposing Murktide. Sarah will have to chump block. Well, she can maybe chump block with DRC, maybe not on the endurance. It really depends up to her there. And yeah, she'll be in a position to live.
Question for you, Mason. How important is getting this Murktide to a 6/6? Because you could, theoretically, just basically discard the heat to do nothing and make a 6/6.
Oh, interesting. I think that might be
the 5/5 Murktide.
Yeah, that's probably really good long term. I for some reason thought she already uses Fire Bluff now, but you're right. It's hiding under that island. Yeah, I think I actually really like that play. And this actually shows just how insane that Surveil was. If she had hit, a sorcery or like an artifact, she maybe could have hit off the Unholy Heat and actually, killed the Murktide if she got incredibly lucky. So, yeah, that was great sequencing on her part. And I think you're right. I think the play for Sarah maybe has to be like winning long term is discard this Unholy Heat and pretend it's a +1/+1 counter. And if you hit another instant or sorcery off the top of your deck, especially when you don't really want right now with this DRC, then you can survive Violent Outburst as a draw from Dykman. And then you have this big Murktide, which can crack back and kill in the turn. And if your DRC can get Delirious again on the next turn, you'll win the game. That would be 9 points. So I love that line
a lot. Looks like that's what she's doing.
Yeah, and she's double checking. It looks a little weird, but it is, I think, her best line at winning. I think you figured that out there. If you are going to get a Surveil, and we're binning Ragavan. Wish we saw that a little earlier for the. Oh, and it looks like we are going to do the EE pop line.
Oh, so okay.
She actually the best of both
this is bad. This is bad though. Is she doing this pre-combat?
I'm assuming she did all this in main phase 2. Main? Oh no.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, she put her head down. Okay, it looks like
it must have been second main. Okay, good.
Yeah. I'm gonna guess, knowing Sarah, that she maybe just probably at the beginning of the game said move to second main,
right?
Just to make sure, because she knew there was no world where she was gonna be able to attack, and now she has to decide: okay, do I block this endurance? Do I not? It's a really hard choice because she needs all the resources she can get. Those Murktide Regents might get unsummoned off Brazen Borrower type cards. Fire Ice is a card that will win the game for Dykman, as will Violent Outburst.
I think you got to take this. I mean, you're probably dead to Fire Ice anyways on tapping a Murktide region. I don't know if I like the chump block here. I think, like you said, I think we need all the resources we can get here. But it's very, very close. There is a lot of stuff in Dykman's deck that deals 1 extra point, Violent Outburst. So it's very, very close line. But yeah, that's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, so if I'm Sarah and my opponent plays Fiery Islet and it's Steven Dykman, who I know is good, I assume there's something up because Sarah, and that endurance is going to be backbreaking here. He didn't play the Fiery Islet beforehand, probably means there's something in hand. Sarah's going to have to rebuild here and somehow get through all of this.
That second endurance is, the first one was really good. The second one was backbreaking. That was an incredible draw step for Steven. Now, Sarah does still have some play. She has an expressive leftover. So, like I said, this deck is really good at enabling Delirium as quickly as possible. So there is a chance that we could see something like expressive, get a fast Delirium. We got Sorcery Artifact already lined up. Maybe find a second heat to kill one of the endurances. But yeah, we'll have to see here. And because there's a heat and a bauble in that expressive. So that's not too bad.
Yeah, this is definitely a close spot here. And Sarah, once again, just got stuck with this Murktide in her hand for too many turns. I think Sarah's expressive bauble land. She has Counterspell Murktide in hand along with an unknown card. And I think she might be able to get out of this if she had 2 more lands. She might be able to, find a chump blocker, get, some amount of removal, something on the endurance and live a turn. But I think just given her mana resources here, she's just unfortunately in a position where even if she casts the second expressive iteration, she won't have the red mana needed to play creatures and stuff off that. And she's going to take her time, think through the implications. You see Steven sorting it too, because he knows that, things could be very close here. If Sarah goes Ledger Shredder into a Ragavan or something like that. We could get enough chump blocks. We could then get a Murktide. Sarah could stabilize. So definitely a tight spot to be in here.
Very, very tense spot. So
yeah, we can't see. So we're gonna see what she does here. She's tanking, yeah. We are having our Pioneer event. We have a backup feature match for you. They are in their tournament already for our Pioneer 5K. So what's going to happen is when we're done here, regardless of who wins, we're going to take a second, talk to them, see what they're excited, see if they have an idea for the token they're going to win, because whoever wins this does get a personalized token, like we've seen from the Fable and Mirror Breaker from Connor, Theo, and Max on coverage here. But we're going to talk to them after this is over. We're not counting our chickens before we hatch, but this is a game that, is probably in its final 2-3 turns, no matter who wins. And
I think I probably have an idea of what token Dykman would pick.
Yeah, a boar.
Perhaps a crash. Just creature type crash.
Nice. I kind of want to be an adventure token because no one really. I like the idea of being tokens that no one really uses and they aren't creatures. Like Monarch's a cool token. Initiative.
Cool companion.
Oh yeah, companion's a great one. Yeah. And it looks like we do have 2 cards in the graveyard. We saw our top card is off the bauble, so if it's something that can interact with one of these. We only need to stop 1 endurance too. That's the thing. And it looks like Sarah's going to take her draw step.
So we got 2 counter spells, a Pierce, and a Murktide. Think we are done.
Yeah, there's some red card, but I can't think of a red card that stops this. And maybe Sarah's just playing on it. Yeah, and Sarah, Congratulations to Steven Dykman winning our first event. He's going to make it into our Players' Championship. A great match from both players. One that they should both be incredibly proud of. Sarah, a little upset there, but that's totally understandable. She played amazing. She's going to look back and be really, hopefully, happy with her run there. So congratulations to Dykman here. We see these players sort of talking. They still have a lot of magic ahead of them. They have the Pioneer 5K to sign up for. We are going to get Dykman into the booth here with us in a second, and we can ask him some questions, Devin. I know you footfall players, you'd love to get together. There's a crash of y'all. You can ask him all the little stuff here, but he is our winner playing the Temur Rhinos deck. What an awesome event we had this weekend with the Modern 10K.
Yeah, crazy match in the finals too. Both players played absurdly well, just very, very well navigated. Like, game 1, I go back to thinking about how Stephen played around the Spell Pierce game 1, expertly maneuvered, and that even in game 2, where he lost that game, but was still able to get in that one attack with the Crashing Footfalls. And Sarah played, very, very well. So kudos to both players and congratulations to Stephen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sarah played awesome, just like we said there. Seeing lines like you mentioned, right? Like this Unholy Heat, if I hit the right card, hold priority, pop my EE, things like that, incredible. And that's why she was able to make it to the finals and why we're going to see a bunch of her this year. Like I mentioned, talked to her before, she's wanting to make a run at the championship if things come together. And honestly, while first might be the best result, second's a really good one when you have a leaderboard like we do here at the NRG Series, because it's not like other events where everything's just a PTQ. Well, yes, you do win this event, you go straight to our championship. We have 6 at-large spots for the whole year. So getting second place in our tournament gives you 25 NRG points. Whoever are the top 6 people when it comes to points at the end of the year who are not already qualified, those players are going to be entering our event here, and we're going to be there. So Sarah, she is in first place right now because Dykman's already qualified when it comes to the Player of the Year, the at-large bid. So it's going to be really interesting to see sort of what's going on there. But Dykman is ready, so let's pull in the interview here and see how he's feeling after just winning the big event today. Dykman, congratulations. Oh, you can hear us perfect. You're feeling good?
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Nice.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm feeling great, man. The top 8 was, every match was just so stressful. Every game was so close. The Tamaiko, the game 2, I missed that suspend trigger, and a lot of the reason I missed the suspend trigger is I just forgot that Shardless wasn't out. I just was ready to concede that game. And then the 2 running Shardless is just absolutely perfect. And top 8, obviously, game 3 just was miles behind. Thought I had pretty much lost that game too, to be honest. When I missed my 3rd land on turn 3, I might have missed on turn 4 too. I don't remember, but all the matches were just nuts. Every game just so intense.
I can see the excitement. It's palpable here how good you're feeling. You've been playing this Rhinos deck for a little bit. How does it feel to get the big dub with it, and also to be qualified for our Players' Championship at the end of the year with a straight PTQ invite? If you win that tournament, man, you're going straight back to the Pro Tour.
Yeah, that'd be great. That's I've got San Diego in a couple weeks too, so hopefully I can I can cue there. Funny enough, I haven't played Modern in months. This is actually one card off of Dom Palercio's list that he played in a prelim, I think like last week or something. He had an Emrakul in the sideboard, I assume for Mill. Mill was probably more popular on Moto, but I didn't expect much Mill here. So I just got rid of that for the 4th Endurance, and obviously 4th Endurance was pretty clutch in the last matchup there. We needed all those Endurance to win that game. So, like I said, I haven't really played much Modern. Actually, I don't think I've played Modern since the last NRG that I top-8'd with Shadow. So it's been a while. But yeah, I have played Rhinos a little bit. I played it at that team event that Larry Fields, myself, and Andrew Wolfeis were all playing. And it was really good there too. Obviously, we top-8'd that one, lost in top 4 to the eventual winning team. And then the next day, I think I went X and 2. It was 6-2 in that one. So I've had a really, really good track record with this deck. It's just really broken. Honestly, there's a lot of broken stuff going on, a lot of free spells, a lot of really stupid stuff, and that just kind of makes it easier to just kind of pick up and play without testing a whole ton, I guess.
Don't tell that to Mason.
Yeah.
Now. Mason doesn't exactly think the deck is broken. So.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
Well, I think it's broken in a way. It's just maybe not the way. But when you're as good as Steven Dykman, you get to win the tournament with it.
Modern itself is broken, right? There's broken cards everywhere. In my opinion, at least. So there's a ton of broken cards. It's there are a lot of really, really. This is not Modern from 5 years ago. That is for sure. It is not remotely the same format at all. So.
One thing that I did want to talk about, sorry to interrupt you, Mason, specifically the finals there. I think game 1, I go back to where at least from what I was understanding, I'm assuming you were playing around Spell Pierce in that whole game 1. And me and Mason kind of talked about that, how you just like, you had the option to do something on turn 3, decided not to take that off. So maybe want to discuss that real quick. Is that what was going through your head in game 1?
Yeah, I was trying to just be really patient. I wanted, if I was going to Violent Outburst, I wanted a follow-up. Like, I wanted to either draw a Shardless, like I wanted to punish a tap out. So I just kind of wanted to be as patient as possible and just, it might not be the best game plan against Murktide. I'm not sure to let the game go long like that, but it felt okay in that position for me. I didn't think I would win the game if I just threw my Violent Outburst into a counter spell because I just had nothing to follow up really that mattered. I think the critical turn of that game, I thought, was the not casting Fury into the 3 open mana, and then the following turn where the Dead Gone gets countered, and then only 1 mana up that set like that forced Unholy Heat Bolt or die, and then that ended up working out for me, obviously. But and then game 3, so I boarded out Fury in game 2. I'm not sure if it should be in the deck at all, but Ledger Shredder's beaten me like every game I've played Murktide this weekend. It was my 1 loss in Swiss, and obviously Ledger Shredder just dominated the game in game 2. So I said, okay, that's enough of this. I cut Fire Ice, brought all the Furies back in, and they work really well with the Fables too. So there's like some upside in that regard. But I was just sick of losing to Ledger Shredders, so I boarded them in and was just like, oh, let's see if this works. And that game, that's a ton of manipulation that was not allowed. That Ledger Shredder dying, like even if I had Fire Ice that game, yes, it would be able to kill the Ragavan and the Darcy, which would have been good. But in the long run, I probably lose to that Ledger Shredder. Honestly, it just gets too big. It blocks all my Rhinos. And then eventually it can clock me, but also just like that manipulation scared me. So, but yeah, it ended up working out. So
makes a ton of sense. Makes a lot of sense from us here in the booth. We're mentioning that stuff. My question for you though, Steven, here before we let you go and play the Pioneer event is you winning today is awesome. You get the invite, you get the trophy, all that stuff's cool. You also get a customized Inkling token we're gonna give away at events.
That's awesome.
What are you picking? What do you have any idea? Any ideas at all? What do you want to be?
Oh man. Dude, I have no idea. I'll have to think on that.
All right.
I could do like a really obscure one. I've always kind of wanted to be a spider, an Ishkana spider, if I got a token, but that's kind of a really obscure one, obviously, because that doesn't really see much play at all anywhere. But spider token's kind of a unique one. So
I like that.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, Steven, thank you so much for taking some time to come and talk to us. Congratulations once again. Enjoy your day. Good luck in the Pioneer event if you're playing that. Maybe we'll be seeing you later on today there. And we're going to actually take a quick little break here. We're going to set up our Pioneer match and then hop right into it. So we'll be right back.
All right. Thanks, guys.